least dishonest amongst these, and not for an honest party which they feel that has no chance of winning. This is there because firstly we have this first past the post system, which means, and this first past the post is at two levels. At the first level, the candidate who secures the highest number of votes, he wins and he represents the entire constituency, though he may have received only 25% of the votes of people who voted, and the people who may have voted may be only 50%. So he may have received only 12-13% of the votes of the electorate, but he still comes to represent that entire constituency. And his party may have received, or his coalition of his parties may have received only 51% of the seats, but they come to control the entire government. So often a party which has received only 10% of the total vote of the electorate comes to control the entire government. If instead of this we had a system of proportional representation, then the party which got 1% vote would have 1% seats in parliament. People would then feel that, well, this party may not win, but at least some of their representatives will come to parliament. So then they would be able to vote freely for parties or candidates of their choice. Secondly, see, this system, which is called the Westminster system, by which that party which has a majority in parliament comes to control the entire government, and thereafter it takes all the decisions on policies. It also, since it controls the majority of parliament, it can make any law. It takes all important decisions. In Switzerland, we have a different system of a national government where every party which has got more than a certain percentage of the vote is represented in the government. So they have a virtually national government. All the parties are represented in proportion to their seats in parliament. If you have 10% seat, you have 10% representation. So long and short of this is that we have a democracy where the entire government may be controlled by people who enjoy only 10% support among the people. And those people also will not even bother to ask their electorate as to what is it that they want, what kind of laws, policies, etc. And they act only or largely on the basis of corrupt considerations or the influence of these corporations who control them. So, and then there is a problem with the institutions of governance, that is the judiciary, the civil services and the police. But the problem with the judiciary is somewhat different from the problems with the police and the civil services. But broadly, all these institutions were set up by the British in the colonial times when the British were ruling India. And they were not set up as instruments of service for the people of the country. They were set up as instruments of control over the people of the country. And therefore they have a hierarchical structure and they are controlled from the top by their political masters. They have no accountability to the people whom they are meant to serve. And therefore, they don't bother about what people want. They only care to implement what people at the top want. So, these institutions need to be structurally reformed. They need to be made accountable to the people rather than just being controlled from the top. Of course, there are many reforms which are required in the police and the civil services and in the judiciary. Judiciary requires different kinds of reforms, but they need to be structurally, fundamentally reformed. When we realized all these things, and we realized that these parties are not going to bring these reforms because they are taking advantage of the present system. And the moment you make these reforms, these parties and these corrupt people would become irrelevant, because then the power will shift from these elected representatives to the people themselves. So once we realize that they are not going to bring these changes, whatever may be the public pressure that is put on them, and their arrogance was only one. They said, look, you can't defeat us in elections, because they know or they feel that elections can only be won by those parties which have enormous money through which they can advertise themselves enough so that they appear to be parties who have some chance of winning. So this winnability factor, that this is a party or a group which has some chance of winning, normally is achieved only by enormous amounts of money being spent on advertising, on on an army of paid workers, etc. And that was their arrogance, that look, these people can't defeat us, they can only bring out people on the streets, these people will come on the streets and then they will go back home. So then we realized that there is no other option but to challenge them in elections. Of course, it's a daunting task. We will have to fight against enormous money power without having those kind of resources. But this anti-corruption movement, in some ways, it has transformed our civil society in the country itself. Because while earlier the people were feeling helpless, despondent, they felt that we can't do anything to change things. Of course, they felt that what was happening was very bad, but they felt that we can't do it. What can we do? But what this anti-corruption movement has done is that people felt that at least if they come out, this issue of Lokpal at least came on the national agenda. It's another matter that they were not able to get the government or parliament to bring about the Jan Lokpal bill. But now at least that hope was created, that if they come out and now if they vote for the Aam Aadmi Party, which stands for this kind of complete political revolution in our system of democracy, in our institutions of governance, etc., they may be able to bring about a major change in the country. Because the fact is that this country stands on a crossroad. One path leads to anarchy, the other path leads to reclaiming our democracy. If things continue as they are, then it is clear that within the next 10 years, India would be in full-blooded anarchy.